TV.
I'm very excited to introduce two incredible guests on the show today. First up, we have Amy Hackborn. She's currently the Staff Sergeant of the Intimate Partner Violence Unit, which is a pretty large team, correct?
It is, yes. We have 20 investigators, soon to be 24 investigators, 2 sergeants. We also work with the Victim Services Branch, which is 2 civilians. And then we have 3 members who are detective constables in our early intervention high-risk team.
Wow. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And our next guest is Jennifer Hutton. She is the CEO of Women's Crisis Services in Waterloo Region.
Hi.
Hi, and that's a big job.
Yes, it is. It is. I think we have about 60 some staff now, and we have the 2 emergency shelters in Summer House in Kitchener and Haven House in Cambridge, and our regional outreach services and transitional housing now too. So
it's a lot.
Yeah, we've been busy.
Yeah, and you do important work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you guys work closely together sometimes, correct?
Mm-hmm. We do, yes.
Yeah, and you're working on a project. I would love for you to share with the viewers a little bit about that.
It's an early intervention project, and so it's the Waterloo Regional Police Intimate Partner Violence Branch teamed up with Women's Crisis because we were looking for a way to intervene before violence starts. Mm-hmm. So the project began in June of 2022, and a detective constable is teamed up with an outreach worker from Women's Crisis, and they are reaching out to couples who have been involved in calls for service for intimate partner violence. During those phone calls, the officer educates the couple on what happens if criminal charges need to be laid, and then the outreach worker provides them with resources, and they try and determine the root causes of what led to the calls for service for police.
So then they can provide some care around that. So like one thing that's coming up for me is like anger management potentially, or I don't know if there's been a bigger stress. Maybe you could share more with your team members, sort of what comes up.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that joint approach, and the idea is that we are reaching these couples early prior to charges being laid, so that they can get some support for their family and to talk about what they might need. And that could be any number of resources or referrals. Our outreach program's quite flexible, so we want to respond in a really timely manner and connect them with what they need. And it's sort of a unique thing for us because we maybe are intervening with the couple, as well as maybe some separate work. But we know, especially in the early stages, that couples may want to stay together, but they need help on how to live more safely for themselves, how to resolve conflict if it arises. Maybe they need some individual work around some past stuff that they need some healing on. So it's quite a flexible, accessible program, and it's really about connecting with couples early so that things don't escalate.
Okay, and it sounds like you really do a good job of meeting clients or people in the community where they're at, and it sounds like you're wanting to get ahead of things by being more proactive and offering the support before maybe even they need it necessarily.
Yeah, well, it's enough that maybe somebody in the household might have contacted police or a neighbor, and we try to encourage neighbors to reach out if they are hearing something. So there's enough, I guess, happening that there's a police response.
Okay.
Yeah.
But before it escalates to charges, you were saying?
Right, yes. These are couples who have not been criminally charged.
Okay.
So the first reach out is done by telephone, and then if we are not able to connect with them by telephone after a number of attempts, then the officer and the outreach worker will go out into the community, knock on the door, and try and connect with them.
Personally. Oh, that's wonderful. I think that there can be misconceptions around what domestic violence even is. I find as a therapist sometimes people don't even realize when they're in abusive cycles or dynamics because maybe there isn't physical violence happening. So would you be able to elaborate a little bit on what does it encompass or involve? Because I know it's quite broad, as we were talking about before the show.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do think about domestic violence as physical, but it is quite complex, and there's quite a spectrum. It can be things like psychological abuse, coercive control. These are terms that we're talking about a bit more often. There can be financial abuse, there can be sexual abuse, there can be a variety of things. What is at the core is it's really about power and control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and that can show up in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, it can.
But it's less likely potentially that the police might not get involved if maybe there is more financial abuse potentially, or sometimes even emotional, if they're not aware that it's happening.
Yeah.
And so how do folks reach out to your services if the police aren't involved at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. People can reach out to us at any time, and we have a crisis support line, a 24/7 crisis support line. So that is kind of like the doorway into our services, whether that is the outreach services or whether that's emergency shelter.
Okay.
We also have a 24/7 chat line that can be reached through our website. So we just try to make it easy for people to get help. And now I've been saying often too is that even if you're worried about a loved one, to also reach out if you need some tips as to what to do, because not everybody calls police, but
right.
They may tell a friend or family, but oftentimes that friend or family doesn't know what to do,
right.
And may need some help as to help knowing what the resources are even,
right.
or
and
that
supporting
kind of thing.
like a loved one or a neighbor or friends or family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so when you do some of this education components at the start, when the police officer and resource person goes to do the early intervention aspect, what sort of things are we educating folks on?
So I think from a police perspective, we are letting them know that if a criminal offense has been committed and there's reasonable grounds to believe that something has happened, that the police are obligated to lay a criminal charge.
Okay.
And so a lot of the people that we're talking with have never been in trouble with the police before and may not realize that a criminal charge would mean court appearances and potentially a criminal record, being separated from their family for a period of time. And so giving them this information before it gets to this point can really be an eye-opener for them, and it can help change the behavior.
So Amy, it sounds like you're really laying out the gravity of the situation, because sometimes folks maybe think they're just fighting, things got heated or escalated, and it's not that big of a deal potentially, but there are serious consequences if it continues, and that could impact family dynamics, job security. A record can follow you for quite some time, so I'm glad that you are informing people about the seriousness of it.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Today, I helped a senior find transportation to an important medical appointment.
Today, I helped a new mom find virtual programming so she didn't feel so isolated.
Today, I helped someone understand new government supports.
Every day, 211 navigators connect Canadians to critical government and community programs and services.
211. Help starts here.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Ani, I'm Carolyn King, and I'm a member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the creator of the Moccasin Identifier. Philip Cote, an artist in Toronto here, took and redrew real moccasins. We're starting over with the children. The idea is that they would research whose land their school is built on, near, or what treaty area they're in. And the educational kit that we have has all that information in there. And the children just, love it. My dream is that this province will be covered with moccasin identifiers within the next decade, and they will forever know whose land they're on. That's the goal. Educate and awareness with a nice, simple little program called the Moccasin Identifier.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
I did it. I need it.
The hero gave it.
And I am alive.
As an organ donor, you can save up to 8 lives and enhance the lives of 75 others. Please go to our website. Pledge a gift of life. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. We're still here with Amy Hackborn and Jennifer Hutton. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we were just talking about how you guys work together to do some early interventions for folks experiencing domestic violence. So on the break, we started chatting about your family violence project and how you are on that committee together. So can you share a little bit about that?
So the Family Violence Project is located on Queen Street out of the Camino Wellbeing and Family Services building, Mental Health and Wellbeing building. Getting used to the new name.
New name, yeah. It's recently new branding,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's new, but it's really nice for people because they can walk in and get service, and it's service from multiple providers all at once. So it's really that wraparound approach. So if somebody comes in through family violence, they could get support from us, a women's crisis, they can get support from Camino, and amongst so many other services. And we actually have a coordinator that's there during business hours that can meet with people and help them navigate the system, which we know can be pretty complex sometimes. And we also don't want people to have to retell their story, because that can be difficult. So it's a very coordinated group of people that can offer a number of different services.
Oh, that's wonderful, because we were even talking about if you don't only want to contact the police if you're experiencing some domestic violence, then this is another way to get into the program and get the services and supports, but then at the same time you can pull in the police as needed, if needed, at any point as well. So you guys really are a team approach.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you okay to share a little bit more about the services? I know we touched on them briefly, but I love that you have like a coordinator, a systems navigator.
Yeah.
Because how would you even know when to involve the police or a shelter or counseling services, those sorts of things?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very much driven by what the person wants.
Okay.
So when they connect with our coordinator, it's a bit of a menu of services. People may want to make a report to police or they may not. They might be looking for shelter and interested in women's crisis services. They might have some concerns about their children and maybe they want to talk talk to somebody from Family or Children's Services. So it's very much their journey, but it's nice because we're all under one roof and really working closely together, all for the benefit of the survivor.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it also sounds like it's really good for the police services to be well aware of all these other services as well. So when you are supporting folks at calls or during investigations, that you know what's available to them too from that education component. So when you're meeting with people or doing some of the investigations, does that come up, or like when do you pull in the other services?
So during our investigations, our officers will offer a referral to Women's Crisis. We have mandatory reporting to Family and Children's Services. So if there's kids involved, we'll also be sharing information with Family and Children's Services about them. With the proper consents in place, we are able to share information if the victim is on board with that. So that happens, and that's what makes us a great collaborative group together.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was also reading about that you have been talking about it like it's an epidemic. So can you share more about that, Jen, in terms of how this is a big concern?
Yeah, it's a huge concern. Obviously, domestic violence has been going on for years and years. We have seen rates of domestic violence increase. We're seeing the level of violence, unfortunately, also increase. And we, in September, a group of us from the Family Violence Project went in front of the region to ask them to make a declaration that intimate partner violence is an epidemic. And that came out of an inquest that happened in Renfrew County, where 3 women were sadly killed by the same intimate partner. So that was actually the #1 recommendation from that inquest. So many municipalities, I think it's well over 60 now, have made the declaration, and we were very fortunate to have the region of Waterloo do that, City of Kitchener, City of Cambridge, City of Waterloo, and the Township of Woolwich also did it as well.
That's great, because it's really putting the weight to what this deserves, right?
Yeah,
and the seriousness, and hopefully more resources and funding to get folks like the adequate supports that they're needing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you share, both of you, I don't know who looks at the numbers, but like what are some of the stats around like the reporting, who's requiring services, that sort of thing?
So I can speak to the number of reports. When we looked at sharing with the different delegations about how many people have come across the intimate partner violence through calls for service, we had 66,000 calls for service between 2012 and 2022. That's a 10-year period. So that's over 6,600 calls a year. And on average, we have 3,500 criminal charges per year laid by the Intimate Partner Violence Branch.
Wow.
So those are really big numbers, and it's important for people to know that it could be your friend, a relative, your neighbor. It could be someone that you are working with.
Are there signs to look out for?
It can come in many different forms, I think. Yeah. Sometimes it's someone being withdrawn. It's not always a bruise or an injury.
Right.
But sometimes it's more subtle. Perhaps it's somebody who doesn't have the freedom in their life to do things after work, or spend their own money, or they're being withheld from their family, that sort of thing. Or it could be violence. It could be bruising. It could be injuries that are unexplained. It could be that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that domestic violence tends to escalate. So if something's happening, we always want to make sure that people get help to make a safety plan, because without intervention, it doesn't just go away. It usually gets worse.
Over time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there's so many red flags to look for, like so much of what Amy mentioned, like the monitoring, withholding, isolating, jealousy. We even see that in our youth education program with working with teens and young people. You know, they think if they're boyfriend or their partner is sending, 100 texts a day, it might be a sign of love, or they're really into me, but really that could be a sign of some controlling behavior or jealousy or monitoring.
Isn't that called like love bombing?
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of a pattern, right? Where they can really profess all this love for you, make you feel very loved, and then something happens, and then there's the recovery from that, but then they'll do the love bombing again to pull you back in.
Yeah, there's very much that cycle of violence, and that's why, especially some of the work that we do with police and the work that we do through our outreach services is we want to make sure we're intervening quickly, because that cycle of violence does, there's the honeymoon phase, there's the phase of escalation, or the phase of walking on eggshells. So timely response is really important.
Okay. All right. We'll be back with more.
Episodes of Chicago Wednesday return January 17th on City TV.
Remember me?
Let's get to work. Just like old times.
Looks like we're going for a ride.
We're doing this my way.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Petiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show, if you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
David here, reminding you that Lions TV Bingo is right here on Rogers TV. We've got a new look, a new prize board. We actually have a full card game of $3,500. Indeed, biggest we've ever had. See you soon.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship. But as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Was that 4 or 5? He's lost count and still thinks he can drive. Do you think he knows that when he is caught and charged with impaired driving, he'll lose his license and a lot more? If he gets in his car, he'll face costs exceeding $20,000. Does he realize he could have a criminal record for his choice to drive? And it could be much worse if he crashes. Wonder what he'll be thinking tomorrow.
Have a Holden one at 15.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
I've been dating my girlfriend Haley for 6 months. She started treating me bad, and I don't know why. She says I'm fat and stupid, and I'm lucky she loves me because no one else would. I know it's wrong, but sometimes I think she's right. We argue a lot, and one night she told me that if I didn't listen better, she'd slap my fat face. She didn't, but she pinched my leg really hard. I guess I had it coming. She made up for it. She bought me this sweet purse. I think about breaking up with her, but I'm scared of what she'd do. She says we're soulmates and we're going to be together to the end. I probably couldn't find another girlfriend anyway.
Intimate partner violence, or domestic violence, may look different from relationship to relationship, but power and control are always at the center. Here are a few things you can look out for. One way to recognize intimate partner violence is to understand that it is usually a repeating cycle. These are the common stages. 1. Tensions build between the partners. 2. An incident of abuse or violence occurs. 3. The abuser tries to reconcile with their partner by apologizing or placing blame on them. 4. There's a period of calm. The cycle isn't always consistent. Some steps may not occur, may occur out of order, or may differ in duration. A cycle speeding up or shorter calm phases can often mean the relationship is worsening. The power and control wheel also helps explain how abusers maintain control over their partners. The wheel shows us that an abuser may use a combination of economic abuse, intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation and threats, or physical and sexual violence to maintain power and control over their partner. Often, people may not know that actions like these could be criminal offenses, like assault, forcible confinement, or uttering threats. Knowing about intimate partner violence can help you recognize if it is happening in your relationship or in those around you. A key first step is getting support, and there are many options in our community. You can learn more about what intimate partner violence is and how to connect with important local supports on wrps.ca/relationships.
And welcome back. So we, on the break, I started asking questions about what would you say to, friends who are noticing some of these behaviors or changes in behavior, such as isolation or nervousness, if they're not seeing bruises potentially, because we were talking about how it escalates gradually over time. So after a few years, it could be much worse. And so even if you know your friends or neighbors for a while and it didn't seem like this before, it can change. So can you share a little bit about that? I don't know if you want to start, Jen, and then Amy could jump in.
Sure. Well, I would often say to people that have some worries, there's worries for a reason, so trust that. One thing that I would make note of, we do, at Women's Crisis, we do periodically have a time for people to come and meet with one of our outreach workers if they're worried about someone, so then they could talk through what their scenario is and get some tips that way. But I would, be open if you have some concerns, ask lots of questions, demonstrate to your friend or family member that you're there to support them, you're non-judgmental, you're a good listening ear. I think sometimes it can get frustrating for friends or family as, they're maybe an arm's length away and they see stuff play out, but the person in the situation, there's so many things happening to them and so many barriers, and sometimes they don't sort of realize exactly what's going on. So you just have to kind of keep iterating that you're there for them, you're supporting them, and just open up that channel of communication.
I really like how your services, first of all, have an outreach worker that, again, meets people where they're at so they can assess the situation and tailor their feedback. I think that's wonderful because every situation is unique. I also really like that you said, and I feel like that's an important point to reiterate as a family member or caring person in someone's life, to not be judgmental. I could imagine that, if I went into one of my friends said, like, you need to leave right now, like, this isn't okay, they might actually start hiding it from me more.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like you said, keeping that channel open and that dialogue open, like, I care about you, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I can understand it's complicated, especially if it happens gradually over time. They could be with their partner for years and love them and have families with them. So it is way more complicated.
It's very complicated,
Yeah. And what about for you, Amy? Like, what would you say to some people that you've supported over the years?
So I think what we've seen as investigators over the years is that a lot of people who are involved in relationships that involve intimate partner violence don't think that their relationship is a bad one. And so because of this, I think a lot of friends and family tread very lightly in trying to convince them that maybe it's not a great situation to be in. What I would suggest is there's always support available, whether it's a call to 911 or a crisis line, or coming in to Camino, meeting with the coordinator for the Family Violence Project and finding out what resources are available.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that it's, even on the break we were talking about how some people don't even realize how bad it was until they are out of it and they have more distance and perspective or new, healthier relationships as a comparison to actually see what a loving relationship should be or feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that quite a bit, that once people have a bit of time or separation, then maybe they're realizing the extent of what was happening.
Yeah, well, especially if they are in an abusive relationship, potentially, that they're feeling like that their life is going to be worse without them, like that manipulation aspect there, just fear in general, right? If you just are afraid to leave what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's always other factors at play. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes there's children involved, and the thought of walking away and starting anew is a lot to consider. So we have to be very patient with people that are going through this.
Yeah. And even to your point, Amy, I'm glad you brought that up too, is that maybe they want to work it out, right? And they want the early intervention to figure out so we don't escalate it. It doesn't continue to escalate. We can get your partners or your family some support around this.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to consider what women are wanting, whether that's to stay together or whether that's to leave, and to help them do that, and to just meet them where they're at and give them the tools so that they can be happier, healthier.
I started dating Max 3 months ago. He was so sweet and he made me feel awesome. He told me I was the one. It was so great, but then it changed. He said I couldn't hang out with my friend Lucas even though we've been friends forever. And I have to stop talking to my friend Brooke because she puts stupid ideas in my head. Last week, he told me I was dressed like a slut and I was putting on for other guys. He said he was sorry, but then he said it was my fault because I don't use my head when I pick my clothes. Last night, he said I could never leave him because he doesn't know what he'd do. I guess he really loves me?
Unhealthy relationships aren't always easy to spot, especially if you're in one. By knowing the signs of an unhealthy relationship, you can recognize what's happening to you and those around you before it worsens. In an unhealthy relationship, one partner holds more control. The abuser will try to make all the decisions, telling the other partner what to do, what to wear, or who to spend time with. Often, they try to account for every minute of their partner's time. A partner may be hostile and try to pick fights. This can cause the other partner to change their behavior to avoid these situations. A partner may be dishonest, lying, keeping information from you, or stealing. They may say something like, "You don't trust me," when confronted. In unhealthy relationships, there's a sense of disrespect. One partner may ridicule the other based on their opinions or interests. They may also destroy belongings. A partner may also use intimidation to control aspects of the other's life by making them feel fearful or timid through threats of violence or breakups. They may also create a sense of dependence, making you feel guilty by telling you how they cannot live without you, and potentially threatening self-harm if you leave. Finally, any relationship that involves physical or sexual violence is unhealthy. At no time should anyone ever touch you without your consent. You and those around you deserve healthy relationships. A healthy relationship is based on trust built over time. It embraces your individuality. It doesn't involve perceived or real force, and is something you freely commit to without being manipulated or made to feel guilty. You can learn more about how to spot unhealthy relationships and connect with important local supports on wrps.ca/relationships.
Kitchener's perfect music mix is on Chime 96.7. So every song is someone's favorite song. On Chime 96.7.
Remember me?
Let's get to work. Just like old times.
Looks like we're going for a ride.
We're doing this my way.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
Personal finance show that dares to ask those money questions you've always wanted to. Join Mike Bregueth when he talks with experts on all aspects of money. Money Matters with Mike Bregueth, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Rogers TV.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, Nishnawbe man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Liz Dowdsville, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. In 2008, carbon monoxide, a deadly invisible gas, killed an entire family in our province. That tragedy led to a new law requiring homes with potential CO sources to have alarms. John Gignac's family members passed away that day, and he shares his story to save others.
Please make sure you have working CO alarms in your home. Protect your family today.
And welcome back. We're here with Jennifer Hutton, who's the CEO of Women's Crisis Services here in Waterloo Region.
Yeah, hi.
I know we've already talked about it a little bit, but can you give us another synopsis of what that entails?
Yeah, so Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region has 2 shelters. We have Anselma House in Kitchener and we have Haven House in Cambridge. Each shelter has 45 beds.
Oh, wow.
So 90 shelter beds for our region. We're quite large, if not one of the largest violence against women shelters in the province. We also have a transitional home called Aspen Place. That's one of our newest housing spots, because we were really finding that people were staying in shelter for longer and longer periods of time because of the affordable housing crisis. So that's become like our second stage home. So that's worked out quite well. And we also see over 1,000 women or gender diverse individuals in our regional outreach program. And how that works is it's available to people quite quickly. We don't have a wait list, and really trying to meet people where they're at. We can meet with people in the community. We meet with people at the Family Violence Project, home if that's safe to do so. So it's a very accessible and flexible service to help people with safety planning, risk assessments, housing,
And you counseling
all that
services
kind of
as
stuff.
well, right? Do the counseling services or hook them up at least with counseling?
Yeah, it's really supportive counseling from that team. We do have clinical counseling.
Okay.
We have a child and family therapist, and we also have clinical support workers that are working in shelter and as a collaboration with Family and Children's Services too.
Wow, you do a lot.
Yeah, we do.
You do.
Yeah.
And you do some interesting things as well. I heard you just came out with a documentary and you do a podcast. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was through our She Is Your Neighbor project. It's probably been 5 years now 5 years ago that we started the She Is Your Neighbor project. And that is podcasts. So people can listen in to various podcasts because, again, domestic violence is such a complex issue. So we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about things like domestic homicide. We talk about the family law system. We talk about disproportionate rates of violence against Indigenous women, Two-Spirit folks. So we have any number of podcasts available, and our most recent efforts has been around a short documentary that we did with local film company Digital Sabbath.
Wow.
So
what's in the documentary?
Yeah, the documentary talks a little bit about our services and how we developed the She Is Your Neighbor project, and it shares the story of a woman, Colette Martin, who is from New Brunswick, and she was almost killed, stabbed multiple times. Wow. So very intense story, and Colette has really made it her life work to share her story as a way to change the narrative and make change and let people know that they're not alone. So she's done some really great advocacy work. She helped bring in a new law in New Brunswick around having people be notified if their intimate partner has had past criminal charges.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good and important.
Yeah.
That's terrible that happened to her, but good for her for, giving it a voice.
Yes.
It also, I want to reiterate what we've been kind of saying throughout the show, though, is, when you hear stories like that, I'm sure people are like, how could you be with someone that's so violent? And I'm sure it didn't start that way.
No, it definitely didn't start that way. And this was actually, Colette had left her partner, and it was like some months later that her partner came back. So that is sort of the sad reality that sometimes even when people have left an abusive relationship, that they have to that safety plan has to continue to be in their mind, because sometimes that stalking behavior can continue, and sometimes that even when they've left the partner, that there could still be safety issues that they have to worry about.
Wow. And that's why it's even important for you to have a support system, right? For folks to have a support system if they leave an abusive partner, if they're in a relationship that they're trying to make healthy or work on it to be healthy. It's important to not be alone in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often say that when somebody leaves their abusive partner, it's the highest risk time. So it's really important to have that support system. Sometimes that might be formal supports like counselors, or it might be just making sure that friends or family are looking out for you and just know how they can help you.
Right, and even just having a safe place to go potentially if needed.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm just wondering, for friends who I guess hear, or friends or neighbors who know that maybe there's like domestic violence happening in a home, how can they be supportive to their friends? I guess if they know it's already happening?
Yeah, if there's already happening, continuing to remind them that they are worried about them, that they're there for support. Yeah, it can be really tricky sometimes, but it's just really important to stay by them, to check in, to see how things are going. that kind of thing.
I love the campaign, She's Your Neighbor. I think it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Even just the name. So why did you guys select that name?
Yeah, well, we really we're talking about how domestic violence in some ways is really a hidden issue. It's really come to light more recently, actually, but people weren't talking about it, and people weren't really necessarily engaging in it. And we often see these photos or these stock images of women that are battered and bruised, and sometimes people don't necessarily align with those images.
Right.
So we wanted to show photos of women that are very successful but can still experience domestic violence, because very much as part of our podcast we also have a photo series that goes with that. So an example is our past Waterloo Mayor, Brenda Holloran, who's been open about being a survivor, and it's not something you would necessarily think about, but domestic violence can happen. It does happen in our neighborhood, and it can affect anyone, really.
Anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't discriminate in that way.
It does not.
Yeah.
No.
So how can anyone get in touch with your services? I guess what would be, you said you had like a chat or a phone number?
Yeah, we have a phone number, and an easy way is to go to our website at www.wcswr.org, and people could log on to the chat there. They could find out our numbers, and of course there's quick ways to escape the site if you need to, and just to make sure that people are being safe around their use of technology, clear their browser, that kind of thing. That's important to think about too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks so much for being here, Jennifer.
Well, thanks for having me.
And sharing the information.
Yeah,
I can't wait to watch the documentary and listen to the podcast.
Great, thanks.
Okay, stick around. We'll be back with Amy after the break.
This year, the NHL All-Star Game is in Toronto.
Here in my house. In our house.
And all the stars are here for hockey.
Hungry for skills.
Here we go, here we go.
Cheers for power.
This is the main event. Here we go, here we go. Here we go, here we go. Oh.
Toronto, you hear this?
The Rogers NHL All-Star. Watch on Sportsnet.
Here we go.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Petiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show, if you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Smudging is a very important part in our life as we're all learning to walk the good way. When we smudge, we use the sacred medicine, the white sage, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar. It cleanses negative energy and replaces it by a positive energy. When I smudge, I cleanse my end and my eagle feather and start cleansing my breath to have better words. I will smudge my eyes so I could see the better things offered to me. I will smudge my ears to hear the good thing that people have to say. I will smudge my hair to have good thinking from my head. I will bring the smudge to my feet so I could walk in respect with our Mother, the Earth. Smudging is the way we give our prayers to connect our spirit to the Creator. We express gratitude for the gift of life, the learning, and growth.
guys, Steph here from The Cruise TV, the show where we talk about the people and stories behind the coolest cars on the road. Join us on Sundays at 8 p.m.
For frank discussion on Canadian politics and issues that matter to you, tune in to Addressing the Issue with Andy Streisfeld, Fridays at 6:30 on Rogers TV.
And welcome back. I am here with Amy Hackborn. She is currently the Staff Sergeant of the Intimate Partner Violence Unit. So we've been talking throughout the show. However, I am excited to learn more about what your team does and I guess the whole process.
I can speak to that. So sometimes, as we mentioned, we have a coordinator with the Family Violence Project. So if someone were to come into Camino Health and Wellbeing, that they can triage the call, and sometimes if the person reporting wants to speak with police, we end up getting involved that way. But most times it's through a call to police, whether it's on 911 or on a non-emergency line.
Okay.
So at that point, the call taker in our communications center enters in all the information. Sometimes the caller is the victim. Sometimes the caller is a witness or a family member. Sometimes the caller is who we refer to as the accused party, the person who ends up getting charged, or the suspect.
Okay.
And so once the information is entered into the system, we have patrol officers respond. So that's your uniform officer who's driving a marked police car, and they respond to whether it's a residence or sometimes it's a public place like the mall or out on the sidewalk in the community, and then the patrol officers will do the initial investigation.
And they do the initial investigation during the call, right? So they sit down and assess the situation right then, is that right?
Right, so a lot of times there's not sitting down.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very fluid situation. So the first thing that we do as officers is we respond, and we try and separate the two parties and speak with them privately so that we can get an unbiased story from each person.
Okay.
And so the patrol officers, first they're going to assess the safety, call emergency medical services for any injuries that need to be looked after, speak with both parties, speak with any witnesses, gather that evidence and information, and then at that point, if they determine that they have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offense has been committed, then they will make an arrest.
When does your investigative team, I guess, get engaged? So I'm hearing that the patrol officers will be the first point of contact. They'll start the investigation, do an investigation, and then if there's charges, is that when you guys get pulled in, or?
So once reasonable grounds have been formed for charges, the patrol officer will call up and do a live turnover to a detective in the Intimate Partner Violence Branch, and then we'll take over the investigation at that point.
Okay, and then what's involved in a further investigation more than just that isolated, potentially?
So the patrol officers do a lot of work up front, but once it's turned over, our officers have a bit more time to sit down with the victim and do a video and audio taped interview if they are willing to do that, to interview any witnesses on audio or video if they're willing, to gather medical records, and to interview any accused parties. We also do a lot of risk management. So once we determine what charges are applicable, we reach out to our victim and we will safety plan with them. We'll do a referral to women's crisis if they accept it, who will do more safety planning with them. And especially if the accused party is outstanding, we need to make sure that our victims are in a safe place until we are able to get that person under arrest.
Okay, so when you say outstanding, just that they're not physically around right now, so and they haven't been apprehended.
That's right.
Okay.
So sometimes we're able to respond, and the person who needs to be arrested, we refer to them as the accused, is still there. We're able to form grounds quickly and make that arrest. Okay. Sometimes the victim calls after the accused has already left, and sometimes the report is made for a historical event. And when that happens, sometimes the accused party is easy to track down, and sometimes they're out of region, and sometimes out of country. And so while we are working to get that person into custody, we need to make plans with our victim to make sure that they are safe.
Right. And so would you call the Women's Crisis Services at that time, or if they have like friends or family and support them in that way?
So if they accept a referral, we'll make a referral to Women's Crisis. And with that referral, we are able to share things like our report, which details the allegations as to what's happened. And we're also able to share our risk assessment. And so the risk assessment talks about different things that have happened in the relationship which cause the police and others to have concern about history repeating itself. The good thing about our risk assessment form is that the Crown Attorney's Office and the judicial members, the justices and judges, have also been trained on it.
Okay.
And so working from the same page always makes things easier when we end up putting our Crown packages forward to the courts, and we're able to say these are why we have these concerns, and we're all on the same page.
Okay. Wow. Big jobs though.
It's very busy.
And how do you manage doing this all the time? Because it would be hard, right?
The volume is high, but the work is rewarding.
Yeah.
And so I think all the officers who work in the branch have come in wanting to help people and understanding that there is a need in our community.
Wow. Yeah, you do important work. So thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, based on your work, and because you oversee all of the 20 investigators, what are some things that you just want community members to know in general, just like from what you're seeing, I guess?
So I think education about healthy relationships needs to start early. So we need to be having these conversations with our preteens and our teenagers and our young adults, because a lot of times people don't know what a healthy relationship is. And so the education piece needs to start as early as possible. And we're having teenagers and young adults, and even for something like distributing intimate images. That's something that comes up fairly often, where an image or a video has been created and shared for a specific person, and then maybe the relationship doesn't work out, and then somebody decides that they're going to share that image with someone else, which is not allowed. And so it puts people in terrible positions, a lot of stress, especially with young people. A lot of depression can come out of that. And so I think the sooner that we can educate young people on what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's going to get you into trouble, perhaps we can prevent these things from happening.
Great advice. Okay, well, thanks so much for being here. And so if people want to get in touch with the police for any matters, how do they do that? Besides 911, I guess.
So in an emergency, if something is happening, 911 is the number to dial. We also have a non-emergency number for the police, so which is 519-570-WRPS, which is 9777. You can also connect with us through the coordinator at the Family Violence Project, which is at Camino Health and Wellbeing, which is at 400 Queen Street South. So that building is open during regular business hours, and you're welcome to walk in and connect with us there too.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
My dad was a railway porter. it was just about the only job a black man could get. But he had big plans for us. Music would be our ticket out of poverty.